Welcome to the Cocktail Guru Podcast,
a show about food, drink, and entertainment,
with a tight focus on the good life,
and all things delicious, luxurious, and fun.
I'm Jonathan Pogash, bartender, author, and the host of Cocktails The Grand Tour.
And I'm Jeffrey Pogash, wine and spirits professional, author, insatiable collector of culinary ephemera, and so people tell me, an engaging raconteur.
And my dad. Dad, we're here with a fresh new episode of our podcast.
Very fresh, and an even fresher drink to go along with the podcast.
I remember
Grandma. You have a fresh
Grandma
mouth.
used to say that.
Grandma
used to say that a lot. You're so fresh.
Yes,
that's your mom.
Yes, she did.
I'm going to pour out this massive bottle. Just knocked my headphones. But we have Sobieski Vodka today from Poland. Okay, it is a delicious Polish vodka. I got it straight out of the freezer, and I'm pouring myself a glass in a fluted, stemmed glass here. And what do you have, Dad?
I have a tall drink here. I have a Sobieski vodka and tonic.
Yes,
vodka and
good tonic water. I'm sure
with a little lime wheel garnish, which I'm going to proceed to.
He is squeezing into his glass
into my drink. I'm doing that right now, and then I'm going to take a delicious quaff. Refreshing quaff of this
and
drink.
You know, I thought about having it straight from the freezer because it kind of reminds me of when I was working at my first bar gig, which was at the Russian Tea Room. Our guest, actually, I first encountered him at that job.
Well, because it's thanks to him that you had that job.
I like to think that
we'll get into that.
I like
later.
to think that I had the chops. But no, in reality, it is because of him. But our guest for this episode is someone we've known for quite a while. Dad, you've known him for a bit longer, I think. Is that correct?
Yeah. I've known him since, I believe, my first life in this industry, which was when I represented the wine producers of Alsace. I think it's even possible, if I remember correctly, that this next guest even may have attended one of my tastings.
Well, I can honestly say that he was instrumental in teaching me about cocktails and spirits. He created the bar program at my very first job. We'll just call it the Tea Room. He was one of my first mentors, as well as one of my dad's mentors. Is that right? Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because I remember quite vividly, thanks to his dynamic and quite brilliant presentations for spirit brands that I represented in my early years, that was in my second life, like Tanqueray Gin, Grand Marnier, Hennessy Cognac, and this guest demonstrated quite aptly how these spirits could blend perfectly with other ingredients to create a delicious cocktail. And he was one of the first to introduce cocktails to me.
A massive, massive welcome to our guest today, Mr. Steve Olson.
Hello, Steve. Welcome, and thank you very much for joining us.
That was quite an introduction. I'm not sure if it makes me feel really, really humbled or really old.
It makes Dad feel old.
Makes me feel old. Should make you feel really good.
It is true, though. We do go way back, and you are right, Jeff. My first time meeting you was not me teaching you, but you teaching me. I sat in on an Alsace seminar, and then later we worked together on Alsace wines. But I sat in and tasted wine with you as you presented way back. I mean, we were kids then. And Jonathan, to your point, I'm not going to tell the story, but my only regret about the Tea Room, I love the fact the way you phrased that Tea Room. You know, it's not RTR anymore; it's just Tea Room. Is the fact that by the time you came on board, I had stepped into a completely consulting role. So I was only there doing trainings and doing updating the cocktail program and so forth. I never actually got to work behind the stick with you there as I had at the beginning when we had first opened. But I know that you were put into a great environment for training.
Before we forget, just like all of our other guests, we always ask them, what would your desert island cocktail be? So if you were stranded on a desert island and you had nothing else to drink, what would you want to be there to drink?
That's a very good question. My question back.
Oh boy,
I'm not.
Whose interview is this? Whose interview is this?
No. I just need to know the rules. So, do I get one bottle, or do I get to make a drink?
Don't be like Wondrich, because Wondrich said, he said something to the effect of I'm going to make,
if there's no ice,
he said, I'm going to make my own still, and I'm going to distill my own spirit, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I'm going to make spirit out of coconuts is what I'm going to do. No, actually, if I could only drink one thing for the rest of my life. Now, if it were a cocktail, then I'm afraid you'd have to send me 3 bottles, because then I'd be drinking Negronis. I mean, you guys know that. That's always been my drink. It goes all the way back to when we first met, long before. I'm so excited that it's like ubiquitous now, and the Negroni is back, and everybody drinks it. Because when I was drinking it, the only place I ever saw it was in Spain and Italy.
Oh my goodness!
and then it was mixed, right there in front of you, room temperature, with maybe an ice cube, and there's no dilution. But if I were to only have one thing to drink for the rest of my life,
could it be something from your collection?
It would be this
Del Maguey's.
I mean, anybody that knows me knows that. Well, Dale, my mentor and partner and brother in arms, Dale DeGraff, actually coined the phrase "got tobola," which you probably remember, Jeff, going way back.
Yes.
Well, here, wait. It must be. Yep.
I remember tobola.
That flask.
I remember.
So most people that were turned on to mezcal back in the early days learned about it through this flask. And of course, the only thing that was ever in that flask was this very rare, very special wild agave called tobola.
Right. Now, this was the type of thing where I think at Tails, it was in a bag, it was in a knapsack, and you were just kind of, people were, always in the knapsack, kind of rogue.
Well, or it might be these, flasks. But they, some people have called here it is right here, my backpack, Mochila Mágica, the magic backpack. Because if you follow, as you both know, if you see me at an event, you see me going outside, you definitely follow me. Because
you're always drinking.
In there, you are the master. You're the originator of that, of whatever that is. Of like having the rogue samples that you're kind of giving out to people.
I've been doing that for a very long time.
In honor of you, Steve, and in honor of Del Maguey, we're going to do a little tasting with you in one of our original copas.
I just made the mistake of putting it back, but
we still have the little copas.
So wait, are we going to the desert island now?
Yes.
Yes, this is it.
Oh.
This is
Can
our
we go together at least?
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Now
if we go together, then I also have to have some really good Torino vermouth. Okay.
Sure.
And I need some bitters like Campari, and I need to be able to, or Aperol or something of that nature where I can play around at least.
Absolutely.
So that I can make a good Negroni or variation on it, either with mezcal or gin as my spirits of choice.
Well, we have granted your wish.
Before we do this, I'm just going to do hold on, if you can see me.
Yeah, there you go. You go. For Mother Earth and our ancestors.
There we go. Yeah.
Jonathan.
Oh,
I just poured a little bit out.
And then remember what we say. The Zapotecs taught us this. Stigi Beyu.
Stigi Beyu.
Stigi Beyu. To your health, to the health of the planet.
This is good.
Right?
Yes. God help us all.
Oh, man, guys.
Because we're all
It has been far too long. It has been far too long since I've enjoyed something like this.
I'm tasting Monero here. Monero is one of my favorite Village Del Maguey bottlings. And Jonathan has Chichicapa, which is another one of, I think they're all my favorites, because Jonathan and I had the privilege, great privilege, of going to Oaxaca with Ron Cooper and doing these wonderful village hopping
That's
tours
correct, yeah.
to see how the Del Maguey mezcals are being produced.
But I want
and
to
it's quite an experience.
I want to get into,
and Jonathan's reaching out and saying, I want to take this group. You got to help me do this. And now, just so you know, for anyone who's listening, so Chichicapa, which Jonathan is drinking, was our very first producer that Ron partnered with back in 1995.
Wow.
So it's been 27 years now that we've been doing this. And Faustino and now his son Max and the entire family are all work with us. They are our partners, as they always have been. 27 years still with us. And Minero, which Jeffrey has, was added within a year. And it's actually those two are the closest to one another of any of the other producers. That they're all really spread out in little tiny villages up in the mountains. But Minas, Santa Catarina Minas, is relatively geographically close to Chichicapa, and Minas, Luis Carlos, is quite unique because it is what we now call, with the new DEO, ancestral, meaning that they're all of the mezcals in those green bottles are made completely traditionally by families in small villages up in the mountains. But Minas Minero is special because in that village, they still use clay stills. A lot of them, not everyone. And so not only is it clay stills, but they also, if you recall from your visit, they're the ones that use the bat. And they beat each piece of agave one at a time and pulverize it and shred it with a wooden bat that weighs a lot. And so every part of it is done the oldest way possible, not using the molino, the stone wheel, but with the bat. So you guys went way back to the beginning, as did I. I mean, so 95, 96, and 97.
And we have a fair amount to cover, but let's step back even earlier than that. Steve, where did you grow up, and where were you raised? And then how did you get into the nutty hospitality industry?
Well, that's loaded questions. They're all closely related. So I was born and raised in Iowa.
No kidding.
Believe it or not. To teetotaling Lutherans. So many people will tell you that my career is rebellion. I would not agree with that at all, because I would say it's more about, for me, appreciation. And that said, all of my family now consumes wine and cocktails and loves them. Save my grandparents, of course, who have moved on, so they never got a chance to experience the great pleasure that alcohol can bring in moderation and with proper appreciation, which I know you stress on your show, and you know how I am. I'm very focused and religious on that. I got my start in the career as a soda jerk. I was 12 years old, and my father was a college professor turned author, and we had this little tobacco store, soda fountain, old-fashioned thing in town, and there was an old couple that ran it, just the two of them forever. And my dad always hung out there. This is where the newspapers were dropped off in our town. This is where all the new books would come. In those days, he smoked a pipe, and that's where that was the tobacconist in town. So he always told them if they ever decided to retire that they had to give him first dibs. So my dad and my mom bought this store when I was 12, and I started working there. And within a very short time was man in the stick, behind the soda fountain. My people would come from miles around to watch the 15 and 12-year-old brothers behind the bar flinging ice cream and making sodas and malted milks and hot fudge sundaes. And we were crazy. And while I was working there, a family started building a restaurant across the street in the old hotel that was being restored. And I was fascinated by it. And I'd worked in hospitality, not just there, but also at the college for years. So by the time I was 15, I opened my first restaurant. And unfortunately, their children, their son and his wife, both had leukemia. And we were, an hour and a half from the Mayo Clinic. So at the beginning, they used to just go back and forth, but then it got bad, and they They made me a manager of sorts. I was a manager by default, because I was the kid that helped them open, and I knew I started in the kitchen. I cooked. And so they brought in a woman who had cooked with them at their old restaurant, and she came in, and she would come in the mornings. I would drive in before school, open it up, get her, let her into the kitchen. Then I would go to school. And then after school, before like football practice or before play practice or before marching band or whatever I was doing that day, I would come up, I would do the banks, open up the restaurant, get everything going. Then I would go do whatever activity I was doing, and then I would come back at night and close it. And I ran the bar. I mean, it was a very simple bar with just a little bit of booze and some drinks, and mostly beer. Tap beer was mostly some crappy red wine, and because it was it was an Italian restaurant, and I ran that. And so when I moved away to go to New York when I was 16, of course, 17.
So Steve, 17. You were just 15 years old when you were doing all of this, and then just holy cow!
Yeah, I couldn't drive yet. I got my license while I was working there, so that made it better, because then I didn't have to make my mom drop me off there before school to go open up. I could walk to school from there. It was just a few blocks, but we lived on a farm out in the country, so I couldn't walk to school during honestly, in the warm part of the year, I rode my bike all the time. And I used to race dirt bikes when I was a kid. So I used to often ride my dirt bike illegally into the city, like in the ditch, because I wasn't old enough to drive, but I could ride my dirt bike. So I'd race my dirt bike into the city. So yeah, crazy stories. But anyway, so when I went to school, it was just natural that I got jobs in the restaurant business. And then one day, I was working in television. I was teaching acting classes to models.
Hold on. Whoa. Hold on.
I had my own comedy troupe with a group
of people. Hold on a second.
And I was running a restaurant.
Models. Wait, hold on one quick second. So
did I say something that
you were?
Yes, he had a television show.
You were teaching acting. So you had already moved to New York City by this point, and you were teaching.
Okay. I moved to New York, and then I went to Arizona to go to college. And when I was in college, I was an actor. That was all I ever wanted to be. And so, of course, working in the restaurant business was the best way to be an actor. And while I was in college and acting, we formed a comedy troupe, which became pretty respectfully. We were funny. And at one point, I made a deal with the guy whose restaurant I was running, a place called Ambrosino's. Louis Ambrosino trusted me. I had worked in a French restaurant. I had worked in some pretty decent places. And I was like, we got to have better wine. I can't make a living here, and I'm going to have to leave unless you let me write a wine list. I was 19 years old. Don't tell anyone, because I had to lie about my age at that time, of course, to get the job. By the time I wrote my first wine list, I was just turning 19, and I worked with a local distributor who printed the list. We had 24 wines, I think. We took the dry storage and built out a little cellar in it. And we took everything on consignment, and we opened up a little wine list. And of course, my income doubled in a week, and I ran the thing, and everybody benefited. And we had a little bar, and I didn't really tend bar in that bar. I ran the dining room, and I made a deal with Louis that I would be the head waiter and do the schedule as long as I could have the days off I needed from my theater. And it worked. And I did that for several years until I was shopped by the Point Resorts to come and open their new flagship French restaurant and be a captain. And I did it, and I opened it, and I worked there, but I ran it as the dining room manager for 8 years. That's where it really happened for me, because while I was there and I was in television, and I was doing the news for the local TV. I was teaching models. There was a modeling agency in town that asked me to train their models to do so that they'd be more versatile for commercial work. So I was doing acting classes for them. That was a sideline thing, and my comedy troupe, and the TV, and I was producing theater, and I was running this restaurant. And then I went to open this other restaurant and ran that. And I was just at that point getting ready to leave for the Bay Area I had my sights set on Stanford and finishing and doing grad school there. And I'd been accepted and I was on my way. And one of my friends had left and had a job waiting for me. And then this opportunity came up and it was too good to be true. And so I decided to stay and stick it out because I'd always stayed in Phoenix because I always felt like I could be part of the Renaissance once they got there.
Right.
So I had to make a decision. At this point, I was 23 years old, I think, and I'd lied about my age for the last 5 or 6 years, and I had to always keep track of. Okay,
how old am I? How old am I right now?
And they'd offered me the job as dining room manager, and I just decided that it was a real easy decision when I thought about it because I love the restaurant business. And as a dining room manager of a 5-star, 5-diamond Relais Chateau, Grand Award-winning wine list kind of restaurant, you have the opportunity, if you want it, to be director, producer, star, if that's important to you, whatever. I mean, it's all there. And I didn't really want to be a star. I was really more about, I liked being in control. And what I liked the most is just the honesty of it. I got to be myself. And for all those years, I'd been all those other characters, and I loved acting. And I think I was pretty good at it. I mean, I really loved it, but it was easy. But I made the decision that I would use my career as my byline. So now the restaurant would be my opportunity to write and to teach and to act and to perform.
That's very interesting because that's similar to, I think, how, my trajectory, because it was, acting, and then that was my creative outlet. And then I decided, I think hospitality can be a full-time thing. Then I kind of morphed that creative outlet from acting into hospitality. And I want to get to something real quick, but before, let's take a quick break right now. Ferrand Dry Curaçao is a French handcrafted orange liqueur created to revive the authentic taste of 19th century cocktails and cuisine. This take on a classic comes from Maison Ferrand owner and Ferrand Cognac master blender Alexandre Gabriel in consultation with spirits historian David Wondrich. Ferrand Dry Curaçao was awarded 97 points and a chairman's trophy from Ultimate Spirits Challenge and double gold at San Francisco World Spirits Competition. A true staple in the 19th century, a spoonful of orange liqueur is a must-have in every modern-day kitchen and bar. Cheers to Ferrand Dry Curaçao. Here we go with our show. And now we're back. Steve, I wanted to talk to you about when you created AKA Wine Geek. Was that around and you created this consultancy? Was that around the same time you were working at the wine spot?
That was a bit later, Jonathan. So the restaurant that I'm talking about was called The Different Point of View. I opened it in 1982 as a captain. And then in 1983 or 4, we were working hard to get Mobile 5-star. And we wanted to be the youngest property ever in history to get Mobile 5-star. So we were told by the Mobile group that the one thing that was holding us back was our catering department. So the guy who was a major mentor to me, Keith Williams, who had opened the restaurant up above, went down to take over the catering, which is really where he had come from in the first place, which is why he was so good at organizing this big restaurant, And he asked me to come with him and be the maitre d' and upgrade the service and make it. And so I ran a 14,000 square foot ballroom under Keith for a couple of years and got it there. And then was brought back up to the dining room, but this time as dining room manager to take it over, which was awesome. And then we got the Mobile 5-star immediately there afterwards, which was really awesome. So I worked in that company for some years and it was unbelievable. I mean, they were so supportive and I just did really well there. It gave me a chance to really grow. And, we had this unbelievable lounge with live entertainment and we were doing handcrafted cocktails and really cool wines by the glass and great beers. And we're talking in the 80s. Nobody's doing this. Nobody's even thinking about it. And in 1988, 9, I wasn't restless by any means, but I had done some charity events with a really brilliant chef by the name of Christopher Gross. And he and I had struck up a friendship and we did a lot of events together. We did a lot of blind tastings together. And it was just he and I decided we were going to open a restaurant, and it was going to be a little mom and pop kind of thing. And then we got these investors came in and said, "Oh no, we want to be part of this, and we have the space, and you're coming with us." And we went, "Oh, okay." So we did, and we got every accolade that could ever be earned, including best new wine list in America at the USA Today, and all the local papers gave us everything. Chris got top 10 food and wine in like the second year they did that back in the late 80s. I started lecturing all over the world, and it just took off. And by 92, it was really rolling. And I had at that time done a couple of those sommelier competitions. I never believed in competition or never thought I would do it. But my dear buddy Josh Wesson, who had won the Sopexa Grand Prix de Sommelier, said, "You're a natural, you got to do this." And I said, "You're crazy, you can't." It's like it'd be like having, Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, and Jimmy Page sit down and compete to see who's the best guitarist. I just took those names out of a hat. You can add 6 more to it, but that's how silly it is to me. You can't do that, On the other hand, as he told me, it would probably change my life, and it did. I went out, I was running a restaurant, and I was there. I was breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. It was my place. I designed everything, top to bottom, back house, front house, bar. We were doing crazy shit. We had 100 wines by the glass. I created a preservation system that, it was like the first of its kind to do that. Everyone thought we were crazy, but it worked, and we were showing weird stuff that nobody ever heard of that now is commonplace. We were drinking Rhone and Beaujolais and Alsace, and nobody would ever drink that. Like in those days, those wines were $3 and $4 a bottle, and I'm pouring them off going, no, you got to try this with food. This is serious stuff. Anyway, I did the competition. I went out to LA with no sleep. I literally closed the restaurant, went to the airport, got on the plane, went there. I hadn't slept. I competed. There were like half a dozen master sommeliers in there, all of whom I knew because I was working on that certification as well. And I won the thing. So then I went to New York and finished second. And then so from there, the Mayflower Inn has happened. So Robert and Adriana Mnuchin decided that they wanted me to be the guy to do their place, and they wouldn't take no for an answer. And they moved me from Phoenix out, and I got a little house by the lake up in Washington, Connecticut, and opened the Mayflower Inn with them and designed all of the front of house, all of the back of house, all of the service, everything. And we set up that little restaurant. And as you probably know, 5-star, 5-diamond Relais Chateau, faster on all 3 than any resort in the history of the world. All 3, it was like they got them all. And New York Times 4-star, by the way. It was insane. John Farnsworth, brilliant chef they brought in. It was John Siliberto. I think he's still running the place now. And he was my right hand and took over when I moved back. So from there, I moved back to the city and I started consulting. And I was working on a consulting jobs. I did remember the Grand Central Oyster Bar.
So late 90s.
It was around 1990.
This is 90.
92.
Okay.
92.
Early 90s.
93. 93, I moved back to the city. I was teaching at the Swiss Hospitality Institute up in Connecticut. So I would drive up there, teach, spend a day at the Mayflower, then go back to the city and do my work there. And one day, living in the East Village, I was like a usual Saturday. I was shopping at the farmer's market. I stopped at Union Square Cafe. I was eating a tuna burger and drinking a glass of William Sellium Pinot Noir. Danny walks in the door, sees me sitting at the end of the bar, and he's like, "What the hell are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Oh, thanks. That's a nice greeting." It's like, no. I mean, it's like he knows me. I'm Saturday. Come on, I'm always working. And I had just moved to the city a couple of months before and moved back. And Danny's like, "You know what I'm working on?" I said, I've heard rumors. We had a meeting that afternoon with Tom, and within a couple of days, Tom and Danny and I were working on Gramercy Tavern. And I, as I worked with them. They were the partners. I was not. I was the director of service and beverage, and I set up all of the front of house systems and trained all the staff and wrote the cocktail program and the bar and the wine menu and everything, and set that restaurant up, which now has been, well, let's say it'll be 30 years.
Incredible.
I know. We opened in 1994.
It's incredible. And you know,
so AKA Wine Geek was after
birthed out of that. And obviously Gramercy Tavern is such an amazing institution and has trained so many people in the industry. And really what I'm very thankful to have been through some of your trainings and training programs, and Dad did your BAR program, but you know, that's really one of your specialties is spirits training. And I think it was it sort of your passion for training and spirits and hospitality that brought you together with Dale DeGroff, Dave Wondrich, Doug Frost, Paul Packle to create BAR. I know we're moving fast forwarding a little bit, but
yeah, no, that's great, because
2006
in between is when I worked with your dad and you,
which we already
It was about that time that I met your dad. It was actually just before that. I think it was a Society of Wine Educators conference, if I'm not mistaken. And as you both know, you know, I always believe beverage is beverage. So, you know, if you're going to work in that side of the business, a lot of people specialize. I have nothing against that. But for me, it's, you know, it's wine, it's spirits, it's cocktails, it's tea, it's coffee, it's non-alcohol cocktails, it's everything. They're all connected. And you don't write a wine list, you write a beverage program, and they all have to interface. And if they don't work with the menu, then why are you wasting your time? It's all about the menu. So I start with the menu and I start with the ambiance, and then I work back. You know, it's like, how do you fit in? How do you make it feel like it belongs here? How do you make it, you know, one with the menu and one with the feeling of the restaurant? And then how do you hire a team that buys into that and fits it and can embrace it and is as proud of it as you are, so that, you know, like, you're training, but you're really training trainers. You know, they're out there, they're ambassadors. And Gramercy was obviously not my first restaurant. I had opened 7 restaurants at that point. And that was the main reason I was brought in, is because, you know, Danny had opened Union Square Cafe, but he will tell you, and did in his book, you know, he did it by the seat of his pants, basically. And he's brilliant. And it was a brilliant opening and a brilliant restaurant. But they'd never embarked upon anything that grand. You know, it was huge. And Tom had never even opened a restaurant, even though he's opened many now. And
that's Tom Colicchio.
Tom Colicchio, yeah. I mean, both of them are complete superstars. They're brilliant. It was one of the most fortunate turns of my life to be connected with the two of them and be able to grow together. And I learned so much working with them. And maybe more than anything, I learned humility. You know, those guys are just so talented and so humble at the same time. And it was powerful. And I came out of there, and one of the things that, as I left to go back, the deal was simply that I could not do any consulting. I was allowed to do my writing, I was allowed to do my teaching, but consulting was off the table, which was fine, you know. So I went back to do that. I was already consulting. So now it was time to go back to my consulting role. And so right after Gramercy, about 1.5 years later, I was already teaching spirits all over the place, but Tanqueray saw me doing a gin tasting. The director of Tanqueray was at a professional gin tasting that I had conducted, and saw it. And he goes, if you can do that for the trade, what can you do for consumers? And we started working on it. And that's when I first encountered your papa, when we first started working on that together. And we created a program. Jeff, this was crazy. I don't know if you remember this, but we traveled all over the world, and we taught consumers how to blind taste gin and how to make classic cocktails in their home with proper techniques, fresh juices, and proper ingredients. In 1994 to 1999, maybe something like that, because it was in 99 that we started working on Tanqueray 10. And we launched that in 2000, and then the other program kind of went away as we started to focus on Tanqueray 10.
And then we traveled together.
That changed the world.
We traveled together for 10 as well, doing these tastings. Yeah.
Well, and we worked together on the whole planning and the launch and the liquid and everything. So I came out of Gramercy and started consulting on other restaurants, Typhoon Brewery,
the tea room,
Trip, Coca Chin, and then the tea room. And, I think Jeff should tell the story of how you came to the tea room, because I think he remembers it better than either of us do. But the bottom line is, how did I get fast forward? So in there, I had a TV show on the Food Network that you might remember called Quench with Andrea Immer, my partner in crime. I was always friends with Dale and always admired and looked up to Dale. Of course, Andrea and Dale worked together. We did the launch of our TV show, both at the Rainbow Room and at Windows on the World, with Dale making drinks and he and Andrea and I doing crazy stuff together. I had done a number of tastings with him. We had become friends over the years. Paul Packolt and I had been buddies. Come on, Paul wrote Kindred Spirits. That changed the world, and in those days, I'll never forget, Jeff, you're the one who turned me on to Kindred Spirits. You brought it in and read me a rating of one of the spirits we were working with in an educational way. And I'm like, who wrote that? Where did that come from? And of course, it was Paul Packolt. Who else would do that, Because I got his newsletter, obviously, but Kindred Spirits was a major thing. So jumping way forward, it was in the 2005 that, as you know, one thing that happened back in the 90s is Doug Frost and I had created a spirits education program for the old Seagrams. Okay. And we were traveling around the world certifying bartenders. We would do 50 to 60 bartenders in a group, and we would do a full day of blind tasting, cocktail preparation, cocktail matching with food. This was in 95 to 2000, maybe. So in the 90s, this stuff was happening, believe it or not. I know most people are like, no, the Renaissance. No, believe me, we were busting our ass because we all got sick of people asking us what we were going to do for when we grew up, or when, this is a really nice thing for you right now, Steve, but what do you do for your day job? What are you going to do when you grow up? It's like,
screw you. No.
So
just for those people who are listening and not watching, Mr. Steve Olson just put his hands up in a way in which, how do I describe it? He put his middle fingers up, like, screw you.
I double-birded you.
Yeah. No, not
you.
Me, but
anyone who's listening to this, that was not for you, because you obviously care about what we do. But in those days, being a bartender, working in service, that was...
I know. Same with me constantly. I mean, in the beginning, people would say, well, what's your day job? And I'm like, well, I'm an actor. I'm an actor. I want to be an actor. Right. And that's all that I want to do. And that's how I went into the tea room. That was my main thing, was just, I wanted to act. And this was just going to be a side hustle, a side gig. And then it was actually at the tea room that all of these people from liquor brands, because you had a lot of offices of liquor companies around there, were coming in and wanting me to experiment with their products. And so I thought, by the time I left the tea room, I had moved on to other places. But in my mind, I was like, well, maybe I could get paid for all these free recipes that I'm creating for these brand people,
Going back to that story, I introduced Jonathan to you, Steve, because Jonathan and I had just completed Gary Regan's Cocktails in the Country class.
I remember it well.
Yes, so that's because I felt confident that Jonathan knew something about the subject. I introduced him.
It's super intimidating because, I asked Gaz. I said, well, what should I do? He said, well, Jonathan, you should just go for it. Just start as a ball back and just pop into the tea room or wherever and see what they say. And so I popped in there, and I think the manager was Quint. I think I remember the guy's name, Quint. Yep. So I spoke with him, and there was the maitre d' Bismarck. Do you remember that guy?
Yeah.
Yes, I remember him.
Bismarck comes from Kansas City. He and Doug are best friends.
No, I didn't
know that.
Wow. But I'm
he ran all of Warner's properties at one point or another. Amazing guy. He worked at the Rainbow Room too.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But I was this green kid, and they all gave me a hard time. They all gave me a hard time. I remember being in the stock room, in the liquor room, and Bismarck comes, he comes to the liquor room. He's like, Jonathan, there is a critic from the New York Times sitting at your bar right now, and he's telling me that your martini is shit. So you go back there and you make the martini, and he's and in the moment I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do? What do I do? But later on I realized, no, he's fucking with you. He's fucking with your Bismarck was messing with my brain and trying to kind of train me here.
That's it.
Wow.
But you also you came in as kind of a special kid too, though, because
special.
Well, I mean, not special.
Yes,
in that
very
way,
special.
No, I mean, with your father being my friend and me saying, no, give this guy
true.
a chance. And,
Yeah.
And let's face it, that was a union house.
Yes.
Remember? Yeah. So that's tough to break into a union house and be like the young kid that was brought in by the consultant guy. It's like, wow, and you did, though, but you kicked ass and you proved yourself. And that's the key, because look what you've done with it. I mean, a bar back, what was that, 99?
No,
98, 9?
2001.
It was the summer. It was the summer of 2001 that I bar backed, and then everything went to hell. Obviously, September 11th, and then after that, I think one of the bartenders for lunch didn't show up one day, and they were like, "Well, you know everything. Can you cover?" And then that's how I started bartending.
That's how most of us did it. I heard Dale tell a story on your show about the same thing. They said, you want the service bar? Yeah, I'll take it. Exactly. What do I have to do?
For sure.
We're lying about our jobs.
There's one thing I want to say before this interview concludes, and that is that everybody out there who is interested in spirits and in education should take the BAR class, the one that I had the privilege of taking for the very first time. The very first class ever given was the class I took. And it's a 5-day course now, but when I took the class with my comrades, it was a 2.5-day course. It was just over a weekend. It was an abbreviated course. That's right. The very first one was an abbreviated course.
That's just the way you remember it, because you think
that's how I remember it. Friday to Monday. That's how I remember it. Or Friday to Tuesday, maybe.
We did 2 versions of it. We did a mini and we did the long one. But
I was in the mini.
But we so in 2005, Dave Wondrich, Dale DeGraff, Paul Packel, Doug Frost, and I, who were all friends, and we were all, at that time getting a little bit older and had really good careers in the business. As I was alluding to, Doug and I started a spirits program back in the 90s, and that became very well respected. And we had always talked about bringing it back. After the demise of Seagram, it was like, well, what do we do now? And we had always talked about bringing it back. And then we decided we were going to bring back an advanced version. And that way we could bring all those bartenders that had taken it could come back. We got Dale to work with us because Dale actually attended our program in the 90s. And of course, you can imagine Doug and I up in front of the class, and Dale DeGraff walks in the back of the room. We're like, oh my God, it's Dale DeGraff. Of course, Dale will always tell the story that he walked in and freaked out because here were these guys, and he knew us, that were teaching spirits, and it just blew his mind. And he says, and he'll tell anybody who will listen, we taught him how to taste. And in that class, and then since then, of course, as you know, Dale is a brilliant taster and is very involved in the bar blind tasting exercises. Anyway, we were working, Doug and Dale and I were starting to put together a thing, and Paul and I were chatting one day, and he asked if I would be interested in joining up with him and Dave, because they were working on something in an academic course in New York City, and thought I would be the right. I said, well, I'm working on this thing with Doug already. And he goes, oh, we love Dougie. and I said, well, and we have Dale. And he goes, well, we asked Dale, but he said he's too busy. I said, well, probably because he's with us. It's like, so it was normal, it was logical. And at the time, Paul was running the International Spirits Competition out in San Francisco, and we were all judges. And so we decided while we were out there, we sat down. As a matter of fact, we sat down with this flask right here and drained it and talked about what we could do and how we might be able to give back to the industry. And that's the way it was created, was to give back to the industry. And we felt like, because we all did so much research and we were all educators and we're all authors, that we could bring something different and share our experience with young bartenders. In the first class, Jeff, you're right, we handpicked 28, I think, people that we knew from the industry for the most part, and said, come and sit and be our guinea pig and help us figure this out. And Jeff sat through that class as one of those hand-selected friends. There were some other great friends in that same room, which was pretty amazing, which we'll talk about someday. And we learned a lot, and we started doing the course. And then we had always planned on doing an intermediate course, because we needed a prerequisite, and we were going to go out into the country and do a few of those, which is when the newly formed company, now known as Pernod Ricard, which was, as you know, Irish distillers and a little bit of Seagram and a little bit of this, and it all came together into a very big company. And they approached us because they needed to figure out a way to reach bartenders and figure out what was going on with their company. How do they turn it into, a bartender driven, trade education driven? And the gentleman who originally contacted us, along with a couple of very, very dear friends that you know well, had been through the Seagram program, and he wanted to know what we were up to. And at the time, Sean was working with the Distilled Spirits Council and had just come over. At the time, Suzanne Friedman had just come over. Yeah. Anyway, they came to us and said, what can we do? And we started jamming out, and we came up with this plan to do Bar Smarts. And we sat down with all the executives, and we talked it through, and we talked about what it could mean for them. And we took it on the road and tested it, and we created Bar Smarts, and we've now certified 30,000 bartenders at an intermediate to advanced level. Yeah. And a lot of those have gone on to do Bar 5 Day, which is not sponsored in any way, shape, or form. It's completely independent. We do 50 to 60 students every year. Of course, we lost a year.
Right. You have one coming up, or next year there's one, right?
We have one coming up in 3 weeks, as a matter of fact. And we have now joined forces with the Culinary Institute of America, and we are doing our class at the CIA in Hyde Park.
Wow.
Yeah, which is really cool. And we're very excited. This will be the first one up there. And as we have all gotten older, our dream from the beginning was that one day we would hand this off to the next generation, and that it would always continue this way, because we never took money for bar. It was always, to give back to the industry. As long as we break even on the Bar 5 Day, we're good with that, So we have slowly but surely been adding faculty, but now this year we have completely blown it up. So we have it's still bar, and all the OGs are all there, but we've added a lot of really young, diverse, energetic, exciting voices, because we can only do so much. And, we always say, and I know you guys have both heard me say this many, many times, that we never dreamed that the Renaissance could be what it was. We just wanted it. We wanted people to just show we just want a little respect, but, and it's not us. A lot of times people will say, oh yeah, you guys are the ones. It's like, no, it's the young people coming up. It's you, Jonathan. It's the next generation that has taken it to a place we never dreamed it could go, that has taken it beyond our wildest expectations, that has respected the roots and the history and the traditions and all of the lore and legacy, but has also thought forward and turned it into something that we couldn't have imagined. And that is the most exciting thing in our industry right now. So for us, we teach all the stuff you need to know, but it's now being not even augmented, it's being led by this new young generation, and it is so incredibly exciting. When you see the new faculty at bar, you're just going to be like, oh my God, it's mind blowing. We're about ready to release the names
cool.
And the collective pretty soon. We will. It's very, very exciting.
Well, it was one of the best and one of the most intense experiences of my career.
Well,
And
thank you.
So
I mean,
I
it's
highly recommend
the list
it.
of people that have been through bar and that have gone on to great careers. I mean, I think we should point out it's not a bartending school.
right.
Okay. If that Bar Smarts is for that, and Bar Smarts is not even a bar. You have to go to the beginning classes to get to Bar Smarts. It's like a finishing school for bartenders who want more.
Yeah.
For bartenders who want to, and maybe you just want to be a great bartender. And I don't mean just, like, maybe that's what you want. But maybe you want to open a bar. Maybe you want to be a brand ambassador. Maybe you want to be an author. Maybe you want Jonathan's job when he retires someday. There are so many different ways. Like, I carved a niche that didn't exist. And Jonathan, you carved your own niche that, took it to another place. And we've all done that. Now those niches are carved. So now it's a matter of, I can fit into a spot, or I can create a new spot.
Well, Steve, you've paved the way, and I'm forever grateful for everything that you've done. And I wish we could. I always wish that we could speak longer, much longer, with our guests, most of our guests, but you especially, Steve. But I wanted to thank you for coming on this little podcast of ours. Dad and I never thought that we'd be doing this, but it's really just an excuse to see each other and then also to see our great friends.
And chronicle the history of spirits bartending and the restaurant industry.
I feel like I spent the whole time talking about my career instead.
Well, that's why we want
that's
you.
That's basically what this is for.
Yes.
I mean, you did the right thing. It's all amazing.
All right. Well, I gotta say, it's just, when you guys asked, as you saw, I was eager, mainly because you're both great friends, and I just wanted to hang out with you a little bit. And I thought if I could support you and help tell a story that needs to be told, I would be happy to do that. But honestly, Jeff and I go back to probably the late 80s or early 90s.
Yes.
Which is a long time to be friends. And, we didn't choose him to be in that first bar class for no reason. He wasn't just my friend. He was friends with every single one of us. Every guy on that team that was teaching, we were all and are all friends with Jeff. And when Jeff came to me and said that you wanted to bartend, you know what my first response was?
What?
Talk him out of it. Right? Remember? I'm like, no, he doesn't. Come on, man. Don't let him do that.
Come on.
Don't let him go down that path. And he says, no, I can't. He wants to do this. This is what he wants.
It's better than better than acting.
And you know what? I just said, you know what? I will get him the interview. That's all I can do. I will get him the interview, because I wasn't at that point, Quint was running the show. And you're welcome, but I didn't do anything.
No, seriously.
No, I mean, you did it all, Jonathan. You went in there, you earned your spot, you kicked ass, you worked hard, you trained, you studied, and you showed that you belonged behind the bar. And then eventually, you showed you belonged behind a lot of other bars and in front of people.
Thank
too.
you.
So,
well, I learned.
I didn't.
I learned a lot.
Well,
I learned quite a bit.
You're too modest.
You are too modest.
Because
one of my greatest memories is also, which we didn't talk about, the Grand Marnier Mixology Summit, and that was a huge momentous time in my career, and it really introduced me to the possibilities of the industry, basically, and that was a great time too.
Well, and that was, to your point from earlier that I didn't really answer your question, that was really the heyday of AK Wine Geek. I mean, we started in 94, 95, I guess. And in the mid 2000s, we were doing events like that, where we were bringing in 100 to 200 bartenders to major events and just sharing, learning, teaching, sharing,
wining and dining. Also,
they were so forward thinking to think of that and let us do that and let us work that way. And the events we did at Tales and so forth.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a moment in time. And honestly, it was up until I finally, unveiled to the world that I was actually a partner in Del Maguey with Ron Cooper, and that I was going to now finally give my time and my life towards working with the indigenous people that make this incredible art form and trying to bring that to the world. And as you guys know, I'd been doing it for all those years, carrying my flask and sharing the love. But it was just 5 years ago or so that I finally said, you know what, it's time. I want to do what I want to do. And by the way, you mentioned Tanqueray 10, Jeff.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember Tom Nickel?
I still drink it.
Do you know that I still work with Tom Nickel?
I didn't know that.
Did you know that Tom Nickel and I actually collaborated on a gin?
I did
Jay
not.
Rieger and Company. We have a gin.
Wow.
It's one of the few American London style dry gins.
Wow.
Designed by Tom Nickel and made in Kansas City, Missouri at Jay Rieger and Co. And it's so much fun working with Tom and having that link to our past. 42 years as master distiller at Diageo, and now we're partners.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Well,
I'm not surprised.
I look forward to so many more things with you and tastings and events and trips and whatnot. So let's look forward to that, and we can leave it on that note. So thank you so very much, Steve, for coming on.
Thank you, guys.
And let's get together in person soon.
Oh. This freaking pandemic, I swear.
It has screwed
look at us.
Everything
We're
up.
hiding in our houses.
I'm in my basement.
Right now,
I feel like I feel like a 17-year-old kid in my basement.
I know, it's crazy. I'm actually traveling a little bit. I'm starting to get out there. I'm actually going back to Mexico next week. So
nice.
Good.
Yeah,
Good luck.
it's inevitable. I used to go every month. I used to go for a week every single month. And I went, Ron and I and Michael all went 15 months without being able to go to Mexico. Wow. And the team did a great job, and we continue to produce, and our producers continue to produce, but all their villages are closed to the outside world. And
I've got to start traveling again too, because I'm going.
Yes, I know
crazy.
you are, Dad. It's true, and we'll get going. But thanks again, Steve, and have a great one.
There is only one way to lead in the wine and spirits universe, and that's education. It's the key to taking command of your professional future.
For you, the bartender, the sommelier, and the wine steward, there is now a successful certification program that gives an in-depth knowledge about sherry, that mysterious and versatile fortified wine that captivates drinkers and that will make your cocktail stand out from the rest.
Conquer sherry to rule the cocktail. Interested? Check out CSWS online.
Go to sherryjourney.com and click on the Sherry Certification tab. We'll also throw that link on our podcast page and on the EatsDrinksTV YouTube channel.
That does it for today's show. If you enjoy what we do, please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also support the show with a small monthly donation to help sustain future episodes. Just click on the donate button at the top of our website and choose your donation amount. To learn more about future guests, visit www.thecocktailgurupodcast.com or follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
The Cocktail Guru Podcast is produced by First Reel Entertainment and distributed by EatsDrinksTV, a service of the Center for Culinary Culture, home of the Cocktail Collection, and is available via Anchor, Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, and wherever you listen to your favorite shows.